especially with Breath of Fire 2, we have what is very clearly the Roman Catholic Church being criticized and being scrutinized, and that decision was very gutsy on Capcom's part, and I think it makes the game very unique because we're not dealing with some kind of imaginary deity. We're not dealing with an imaginary church. It feels very real, and this juxtaposition of a kind of a false Western god, in this case, a very malevolent figure in Death Evans, with the traditional dragon god, who is more analogous to Shinto gods, sort of traditional nature gods. We very clearly see people suffering. We see the characters in this world suffering under the effects of this misuse of faith. And to me, that feels much more powerful than the depictions in Final Fantasy and the Xeno series, which are much more remote. Like in Xenoblade, we have a false god in a very complex story who's depicted in a very complex way, but the application of this idea of the god, of this divinity, is so remote, that the world is so remote from our world that we can only appreciate it as a kind of a distant story. We can't relate to it in terms of any kind of a faith experience that we have actually had.
I thought for one part they did something very cool, very closer, because I don't know if anyone remember, when you start Breath of Fire 1, you actually wake up from a dream as well. Just instead you have actually benevolent god, which is later in Breath of Fire 3 named London. I don't think Landon. I don't think it's the same one. I mean, you could assume it's the same one. And this god encourages you to go out and fight, and you see it. It's very Eastern type of culture, very Hinduism type of religious. It pushes you to go behind and fight, and ironically, the second game starts with a voice encouraging you to wake up and worship God in just the same manner. Just it's not the god. And throughout Breath of Fire 2, like there's small statuettes of the Force god from Breath of Fire 1. They did it beautifully, and they did it with a core understanding of the idea of how to better create better villains. If they tried...
Breath of Fire is, in my mind, a series of real subversion. They know how to take a trope or an idea and turn it on its head and say, make you say, oh my God, wow, what is this? I mean, I think that we were all floored by the appearance of Beruberi in the beginning of 2, and I think that many people were shocked at some of the events of Breath of Fire 4 in their sheer cruelty, in what is done to Faolu, in his reaction to the humans who do these things to him, and in the very foul experiments of the High Minister.
Capcom always tried to shift away the demonic aspect. I mean, if in the first game it was one side trying to take over the world, in the second game it's a god, in the third game it's definitely everything, in the fourth game it's the humans they try to protect. So all in all, it's very powerful. We would definitely expand on this issue in the future podcast, but it's just one of the ideas that we tried to talk about, even briefly, to just explain why we love this series so much. In terms of I think it's very important to mention that both me and you, Jordan, are very interested in stories. We love culture, we love mythology. We are very into legend and myths and a lot of lores from areas around the world. So the idea that this series pay an homage, but do it beautifully by saying we want to understand the subject and not just take something and incorporate it into the world. We actually want to build something that could be made from this world that will fit to explain phenomena that happen in our current real world. That's a beautiful way to look at things.
Right.
So.
And this segues into something that I wanted to talk about, a little bit more fully, which is Breath of Fire's incorporation of various world mythologies, of the mythologies of Japan and China, and occasionally touches even of the Middle East, and certainly more Western mythological ideas. That, unlike again Final Fantasy, because that's sort of the main contention, right? It's the primary rival when it comes to JRPGs. It's the Mac Daddy of them all, because Final Fantasy has obviously had the most success and resonated the most with fans. The comparisons are inevitable. Unlike in Final Fantasy, which borrows, as you said earlier, names and concepts from mythology, but incorporates them and weaves them into an obviously fantasy world that really has no bearing on our own world. Breath of Fire takes these ideas and of course creates its own world, but creates one that is very analogous to our own in many ways. The Church of Breath of Fire 2, the Empire of Breath of Fire 4, that is obviously analogous to the historical Empire of China. Breath of Fire, I think, more coherently draws on these ideas and presents them in a familiar form, so that it can treat the subject matter more directly.
Definitely. And it just built a beautiful world that we can enjoy. I keep telling you that the only JRPG that made me feel the same way was the game that I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name in Japanese. I'm just going to directly say how it's supposed to be in English. Treasure of the Rodra. We tried to do something that made me feel completely the same way as the first and second game made me feel, and it also not trying to force the plot. But we will probably explain more about it.